Hello, folks. This is Andrew Gilmore with another episode of Mostly Movies, Maybe Music. And we're focusing on music today because my guest is a music historian and record collector and a phonograph DJ. What's a phonograph DJ? Well, you'll find that out later. And his name is Michael Cumella, otherwise known as Mac, M-A-C. That's his professional name. And I met Mac when I was 16 years old because he used to do a radio show on WFMU called the Antique Phonograph Music Program. And he was playing all kinds of 78 RPM records like the ones you see behind me there and next to him as well there. He's got his collection out too. And he was playing all kinds of strange stuff that generally you wouldn't hear on any other show. So I discovered his show when I was a kid and really liked what I heard and started collecting records myself. And when I'd accumulated enough records, I wrote to Mac and asked him if I could be a guest on his show. And for some strange reason, he said yes and let me in there. And we've been friends ever since. I was on his show 4 times. And thanks to Facebook, we stayed in touch after that. And so it's been almost 25 years we've known each other, but we haven't actually seen each other and had a conversation since 2009. So I figured it was about time. So I thought the podcast was a good excuse to see him again. And we're just going to talk about our mutual interest in old music and his experiences on WFMU and all that. So it'll be fun. So, Mac, thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Oh, it's so nice to see you as well. Yes, like you said, I can't believe it's been 25 years.
Yeah, just about. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these are the days, my radio days
Yeah.
when I did my show as a vehicle to basically play records and share information with folks, share records, and always had good conversations with people and realizing how everyone collected differently, how people had all different points of view about what they collected and what their interests were. I always loved having any guests on. If someone contacted me and said, "Hey, oh, I like your show and I have a collection," it's like, "Come on down, let's play records and talk about it." So you were one of the people. Like say you were 16. Unfortunately, you were not the youngest. I had
Right.
someone I think who was 9 who was on at one point.
Yeah, but that was nepotism, so that doesn't count.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't my son. It was another collector from upstate New York,
Oh,
and his
okay.
brother came down. Their whole family came down, and they liked the show. They listened, and but yeah. So and then I've had the smelly old men too. Of course, lots of them in the studio being trapped in a glass room with them,
Yeah.
and so always good to have made connections. And I'm so glad this one has lasted for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just go back to the beginning. How did you get started collecting 78s?
Because I was always interested in records. I grew up in the age of records as your primary way of listening to music.
Yep.
And so I'm the youngest of 4 kids. So my older siblings always had records around from the earliest recollection. I mean, I almost don't ever remember not having a record collection of a small pile of 45s going from there. And so always collected LPs and records and 45s, but there were always some 78s in our basement. And there was a 78 speed on the turntable, I remember, our Magnavox home console unit with the lift up top, those things, the radio inside and
Yeah.
inside is the record player. So there were 78s there, but really just collected LPs and rock stuff and played music and just became more and more interested in the history of music and going back as I started to do a lot of DJing with LPs, weddings and events and all sorts of DJing. I was sort of the natural person to do because I always had the records. And so then I became interested in the history of pop music. And as I was DJing, so I was going further and further back. And then, yeah, always the the horn phonograph, and the Victrola are sort of ubiquitous in the sort of the quintessential antique that you've seen in magazines, cartoons, stories,
Yep.
movies. You've always seen them, and they always sort of loomed there. And it wasn't until my mid 20s or so I started to say, like, oh, that was actually a thing that people listened to and used. Not just It's not a prop just for movies and stuff. although it
Right.
is. And so started to think about the Victrola and stuff. Came across one at a yard sale, brought it home, and started listening to records. It's like listening with one needle for I think a year on
Yeah.
records because I didn't know any better that you were supposed to change the needle.
Right.
So
Yeah, I found that out later. Yeah.
that, this is pre-internet days. This is just me getting it home and not really having any idea of how to lube the motor, what the rebuilding the reproducer. That was a whole. Those were ideas I couldn't even grasp yet.
Yeah,
But
that
yeah, started listening to the music and realizing, oh, that this is got some early books. One of my first books. Sorry, as I walk away for a second, that I got was this one.
Oh yeah, I
Pop
have that.
Memories. Yeah. So this was one of my first books I got about 78s because it especially was good for me because I was interested in the history of pop.
Right.
So it's a kind of a controversial book because a lot of people say his methods of acquiring information and putting things in top tens and stuff is somewhat flawed, but I didn't really
Yeah.
care. Just like it was showing me what was popular, and that's what I wanted to know. I don't care if someone said, "Oh, that was never really number one," because there couldn't be number ones. It's like it's great to know that that was the pop music.
Right.
So just started taking it a little more seriously and doing that, and then just that started me looking for 78 then as a more serious thing. That's how it started.
Right. I was going to ask you too. How did you learn how to use cylinder machines? Because that's a different animal.
Well, that came later with once I started getting into the hobby of the machines and realizing there's the earlier technology of the cylinder record players. I got my first one at the flea market at Englishtown, New Jersey. Anyone who remembers the good old days of flea markets before eBay, I really
Yeah.
put eBay as the point where flea markets went from everything is there to people pulling stuff and putting it online. So those pre-eBay days were great.
Yeah.
Um,
My dad used to sell things at flea markets, so I remember.
yeah, so I used to go with them and
Yeah.
yeah, and run around, and I'm sure you saw a lot of stuff. And did you have a bent on grabbing things at that when you were young?
Well, I was just a kid, so I wasn't really buying things at that point. I was just going along with my dad for his work.
Okay. So yes, so got one and really didn't really have a lot of information on it. Um, then there are phonograph shows
Right.
that take place in hotels. People go maybe are more familiar with toy shows and doll shows. Will go and buy and sell and so on. So there was phonograph shows. I heard about one, and it was at the Newark Airport Marriott, and went there and realized, oh, look, here's all these other people who know about this, and they've got
Right.
more books, and there's records, and they've got information. And then I met Michael DeVecca,
Yes.
who runs the Antique Phonograph Show in Wayne, New Jersey now. But yeah, him I've known for more than 30 years at this point.
Yeah. I've
And
never met him, but I remember him from your
yeah,
show.
so and again, pre-internet days, I used to go and spend time in his basement. He would show me things, and we'd fix machines together. He'd show me how to work on them. So very much my mentor and friend at the time, just very open with sharing information, and so that was helpful in learning how to use the machines and understand what they needed to be brought back up to the original specs of sound and performance.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's one of the things that impresses me because I've been listening to your shows. I've been going through the archive and listening to you every day, and it impressed me that you know a lot about the machines. And I really only know about the records because I don't have any vintage machines. I have a modern turntable, but you really know what you're talking about when it comes to the machines themselves. So that's interesting.
yeah, yeah. I do restorations still for people, and I still buy and sell them. And when I get them, I do everything that needs to be done to them. And anybody who buys from me, I tell them all the basics about needles and what to do, what not to do. And of course, if you have any questions, call me. So they're all set up to use it. It's a very
Right.
usable and enjoyable thing to have, as you know.
Yeah. So when you started collecting, were there particular records that impressed you? Were there things you heard that just made you go, "Oh, I've never heard anything like this"?
Oh, I remember thinking about because I was interested always. What led me there was going backwards through pop history
Right.
and arriving there and realizing, oh, there's a whole because even in the when I was starting to do this in the late '80s, really this is there was a fair amount of music you can get reissued. This is still pre CD days on LP. Like you could get
Right.
a hits of the '30s record
Yes.
on LP. But like, oh, it's got Cab Calloway. It's got a few of the big artists of that period, and lots of big
Yeah.
band stuff was out there. But there was kind of a wall when you hit the '20s, where there wasn't a lot of reissues of that stuff of '20s and '10s and aughts,
Right.
and then never mind the 1890s. So there's this kind of wall. But I was again reading about a lot of it in here and saying, so there's this whole world of pop music that you have that's only accessible pretty much by finding it and listening to it in that format. So that was like a big part of the pursuit of what to try to find first. Yeah, it was a lot of the big hits. It's like, oh, you're a grand old flag. I've heard that
Right.
caricatured, and I'd never seen the George M. Cohan movie at that point, but that kind of song. It's like, oh wow, here's an original version of that when it came out. Very interesting.
Yes.
And stuff like Alexander's Ragtime Band. This. Oh my God, it's a song that changed the world. But here's the one of the original versions of it, and reading its history and learning about the artists who were stars during the day was fascinating. And then yeah, a lot of I became interested in other the relationship between pop music and culture and how they affected each other.
Right.
So things that were songs that were topical, say for example World War I things, or
Yes.
talking about the war, and a lot of interesting instrumentalists, artistic whistlers.
Yep.
Like, oh, that was a thing, huh? Artistic whistlers. Okay, yeah. Of course, about my obsession with laughing records.
Yes.
That was a thing. I've got probably about 30 of those at least.
Do
Different
you do
ones.
you remember the first time you heard the OK Laughing record?
Well, the roots of it go back to I think it's a Walter Lantz cartoon.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that one?
Yes. Yep.
I know I saw that as a kid because it's a deep seated memory of that whole thing, and but I never realized until much later that it was actually based upon the record. So I think it goes back to that. Um, there were always kind of laughing records that made their way. There was a mad one, a mad laughing record that came in the magazine. That was a big
Oh
one.
yeah.
There were laughing things here and there, but
Weston and Young.
yeah, well, that's going. I'm talking like in the '80s and stuff, like
Oh right.
or later on. There was things that were laughing records, but then yeah, when you get back there, there's so many laughing. It's like, oh, that was a whole big thing. And of course, since then I found crying records
Right.
and coughing record, a sneezing one about sneezes. Um, yeah. So just realizing, there's all the ethnic stuff of like, okay, here's all these ethnicities that are here in the country getting music. Um, in that period, then I got interested in the birth of jazz, and the birth of
Yes.
blues is in there. So all when it starts to come out on record, um, Uncle Josh, like who was this guy, right? He
Yep.
was a ubiquitous character 100 years ago. There wasn't anybody who didn't know Uncle Josh. Maybe like
Yeah.
no one doesn't know Michael Jackson today.
Right.
Uh,
Speaking of which, you told me years ago that you had a story about Uncle Josh in a barber shop, and you had something with that record that you never got a chance to tell me. So, what's that story?
I don't know Uncle Josh. I don't remember what that story was, Andrew.
Oh,
I mean, I know there's Uncle Josh at the barber shop. Yeah, but
you said you had an experience with somebody uh, having some memory of that record or something. But it was on Facebook a long time ago. I was hoping this would be your chance to talk about that. But
I
if you
wish
don't
you
remember,
pointed it out to me to jog my own memory
yeah.
because I'm not remembering specifically about Uncle Josh in the barber shop. No, sorry,
Okay,
drawing
well,
a
we can
blank
skip
on
that.
that one. My own story.
Oh, well. I guess, well, I can tell you a story that's kind of interesting because, of course, you know Cohen on the telephone. I know you've heard that. And I don't know how much you remember about my dad, but he used to be in the book business and he's retired now. And sometimes when he would go on house calls to pick up people's books, sometimes they'd have records. And he met this woman years ago that they got into talking about how my dad was telling her, "Oh, my son collects 78s and so on," and she mentioned that she remembered listening to Cohen on the telephone when she was a little girl, and she and her sister thought that was such a funny record back in the day, and they would sit around and listen to records like that. And so I had a copy of Cohen on the telephone, and I dubbed it onto a cassette tape and gave it to this woman, and just to reward me, I guess she gave me her record player, which was an old record player from the 50s. It's a Stromberg Carlson. That is actually a 4-speed player. It has a setting for 16 RPM records on it, along with the other speeds, which must be pretty rare. You don't see a lot of those. But I still have that record player, and I had to replace the needle recently, but it still plays really good for a machine that's about 70 years old. So
Yeah,
that
they
shows
don't
you
make
just
them like
from
they used to.
yeah. So just from having Cohen on the telephone, I got this record player that I still have.
Yeah, the longer you're involved in something, the more things are attracted to you.
Yeah,
So records and machines, people contact me. Oh, I heard from a friend, heard it from a friend, heard it from a friend that you're interested in old 78s, and I've got a bunch of them, and you want to come and talk about them, and maybe take them, or I mean, sometimes it's good stuff. Sometimes they just need someone to clean out their basement, and
yeah.
it's like a trick. And but so, but always I'm interested in like acquiring machines. And what's interesting, you talk about this record player and how it's 70 years old and it still works pretty good. Well, the Victrolas, they're mechanical,
Right.
so they're really operating exactly how they did 100 years ago. I mean, unless
Yeah.
they were abused. And I conjecture that now they'll be able to easily run 200 or 300 years into the future if they're just kept in a good environment and passed on to someone who just keeps them, in rooms like we like to be in,
Yep.
and maybe even 500 years easily. It seems like because they're just so well made. I tell all the people in when I give them a machine or sell them or fix their machine for them, and all the big collector circle that I'm part of now on Facebook. Yeah, I tell listen, we're all just caretakers at this point.
Yeah.
We brought them back to the original condition, and they're going to outlive us. So whatever you're going to do with them, they're going to just remember that we're caretakers.
Well, I think about that with the records. If I have a record that was made in 1912, I think, how many hands did that pass through before it got to me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Um, I mostly want to talk about you, of course, but I should just mention that, because I'm sure you'll appreciate this, that I don't know if you read a lot of my Facebook stuff, but I'm a teacher. I've been teaching for 16 years,
Yeah, the
and
movie courses. Yeah.
yes, yeah, I wasn't sure, because you're not on my page all the time, so I'm not sure what you're aware
Yeah, I
of,
see
and
your stuff.
yeah. But anyway, yeah, I did a course on the history of music a few years ago. I wanted to take a break from movies, so I did music from 1900 to 1950. So I just had people come over, and I brought my Stromberg Carlson out, and people sat around and listened to 78s for 2 hours every week.
Nice.
And that was a big hit. People really got a kick out of it. So,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that all came from you. I wouldn't have been doing that without you.
It's all about sharing stuff.
Yeah,
I know you
absolutely.
want to talk at some point about my phonograph DJing that I
Of
do.
course.
Yeah, this is a good segue because yeah, I used to do my radio show, and it was again I looked at it as a vehicle for I would acquire records. I mean, sometimes I would do a show, and I would be playing records that I acquired that week that I didn't even listen to yet. So that's how much of a discovery it was for me. I wanted to be perfect world. I was like, hey, I got this pile of records this week. I think there's some good ones in here. Let's listen. And some were and some weren't. Um, so as I started to do that, playing records and just sharing, I remember I got a call from someone saying, "Hey, we're doing an event, and we want you to bring the phonographs out and play music, for our event." I was like, "Oh, really? Okay, sure. I guess I could do that." And they're like, "Oh yeah, and we'll pay you." It's like, "Oh, well, sure. That sounds good. Yeah, I'll come do it." So I did that, and there's probably a year that passed, and then I got another inquiry saying, "Oh, we're doing this event at some club, and we want to have this kind of music. We think would be perfect to like augment it. Come and we'll pay you." And it's like, "Oh, hey, listen, people are willing to pay me to do this." So okay, and then I was like, okay, but then I was with a friend soon after that, and she said to me, she's like, "Wow," she's like, "You're already like doing something. You've created something now by doing
Yeah.
this." Like, I have? She's like, "Yes, you have."
No, nobody else was doing it.
Yeah, she's like, "You're doing this like DJing with these machines. People love DJs, and you're doing with that." She's like, "You got to get some cards made and start putting it out there." I was like, "Okay." And at that point, I just started getting cards made and putting it out there. And I was fortunate to hook in with suddenly this burgeoning New York City scene of speakeasy culture and Gadsby appreciation. The Jazz Age Lawn Party was a big
Right.
thing that was going on Governor's Island, so I was doing it there. And all sorts of other events were going on. I found sort of this tribe of people that appreciated this music. There are these musicians who played the music. There are the burlesque dancers who danced to it. There are the
Right.
serious dancers who knew all the steps, the Peabodys and the Foxtrots. There was other record collectors and just clothing enthusiasts of the period. So it was really fun. That really helped get it out there a little more. And then just really from there, just sort of happened naturally of getting out there with the two machines, playing the records. I've done libraries. I've done casinos in Las Vegas. I did an event last week, 100-year anniversary party for a pool supply company.
Huh.
And then I was at a Chinese New Year's Eve, Chinese New Year party on Saturday. All sorts of opportunities to get out and play the music. And a lot of it is what I call edu sorry edutainment.
Yeah.
That's the word, edutainment. Because people want to see the machines. Oh, is this real? First they're like, oh yeah, where's the wire coming out of this? How's it hooking up? It's like, no, this is it. This 1905 record. Like, oh my god! And then them getting to hear the sound of it, because it's not the typical bassy, boom, 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 boom,
Right.
That stuff.
Yeah, I was going to ask what kind of reaction you get from people who might not have heard music of that era before or aren't familiar with it like we are.
They're just a little amazed and astonished that it all still works and how it sounds. I think a lot of people do have some references to it from, again, culture of books, movies. There's lots of scenes I could think about through the years of that use phonographs and stuff. So they're out there, and so people are fascinated, I'd say, by them.
Yeah.
There's something about the technology that is 100 years old, but in a certain way, I find people are amazed by it because it's kind of accessible. You see
Yeah.
the horn, and you see just this tube, and I say, no, it's just the needle vibrating in the record here, and it's going out this tube and coming out and just coming out the horn, and that's it. That's it. You can understand it.
Yeah.
So
Where's the USB cord?
yeah, some people are like that. They're looking around like, oh, no, there's got to be a USB cord back here somewhere. Where is that? It's over there. Where is it? I know you're hiding it. This is a trick. It's a trick.
Yeah.
I'm like, I am a trick, sir. I am a trick all around.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, and I know that I remember reading the New York Times piece about you, so that must have been exciting. What's that like when you get that phone call?
Um, that how did that come about? I'm trying to remember. I don't remember how it came about, but yeah, the person reached out to me and was interested in what I was doing. The whole idea. I've had a lot of different interviews through the years and for different websites and print publications
And today you've
about.
reached the low point of doing that.
There's no low point. It's all just there's no points. It's all just a smooth curve.
Sure.
There's no points. Uh, so yeah, it was exciting for them to want to come out and be interested in the whole idea of what I was doing, and just sort of uh, talk about it and get it out there. And so yeah, that was a good spate of bookings after that. And, we'll get a lot of action, but then there was a few years later when I had my other New York Times article. Remember that one?
I only saw the one.
You didn't see the one about Nora Bayes?
I don't think so. No.
You don't know
Maybe.
the
Well,
story?
I might have.
How much time do we have?
Oh, we have as much time as you want.
You don't know my Nora Bayes story? You know Nora Bayes,
Yeah,
right?
I know you're a fan of hers. Yeah.
Well, do you know who she is, right? You have any of
Sure.
her
Yeah.
records?
Of course.
Well, you know she was like a huge star of
Yeah.
vaudeville. She was the queen of vaudeville and entertainment. She was the top person in New York and tour, in England and on tours. She was the original diva almost, and of pop music. But so a friend of mine and myself used to go to Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx because Burt Williams is buried there,
Ah.
George M. Cohen is buried there, Duke Ellington is buried there, Nat Wills is buried there,
Hmm.
and we used to go just the two of us and play records at their graves. We just wanted to do that, and and it's a beautiful cemetery. It's
I'm sure.
actually a national uh, landmark site or hereditary site, World Heritage Site for funerary art. It's just, yeah, amazing place. So, and I heard that Nora Bayes was buried there also. And so we went to the office and we're like, where's Nora Bayes buried? And they're like, oh, yeah, she's in an unmarked grave because of family complications. So, but we can kind of tell you where she is, kind of. And I'm like, all right, yeah. So, I think that I left at that point and didn't go, but I came, but after I did that a few times, they asked me about doing a regular tour,
Hmm.
and I was like, yeah, oh, I'd love to do a tour. So, and then when I went to meet them and talk about it, I said, tell me about where Nora Bay's grave is again, and they said, oh, it's this area. I said, all right, I'm going to go over there. Now, just pause before I get to where she's buried. Um, just a little more background for you, so you know a little bit more about Nora Bayes. I like to say that she lived her life like a man in the teens and 20s, and how I mean that is she was in complete control of her career. She was sort of worked with as her own manager, and she was demanding. She got everything she wanted because she was the top biller. She was petulant. She wanted to change the terms at any time. She would. She wanted to walk out. She would, and you would pay her to come back. She just, always top billing on any shows. Don't give me any shit, or again, I'm walking out. And she made a lot of money. She was, in the newspaper for all sorts of things, and also she had five husbands
Hmm.
and lots of men in between, which she bragged and boasted about. So she was a real manizer,
Hmm.
if there ever was one. So and there's stories where like men are just hanging around her, wanting to do things for her, and the way she talks about it in interviews where she just treats them like playthings. These are just men playthings for me. So, anyway, I go to the grave and I'm like there. I'm like, oh, I know she's here somewhere. I'm just like, it's too bad we don't have a grave site. And I felt like her spirit come up and like, oh yeah, I was, wow, you're here. It's just like a moment of thinking, wow, it's what I know about you, and you're here. It's too bad you don't have a grave site. It's stone. It's not right. and sort of this conversation happened, whether it was in my head or with hers, of just like, yeah, it is a shame, and you got to do something about it. Uh, and just sort of that moment of realization of, huh? Because yeah, I do think it's important. Yeah, that's right. You do think it's important, so you have to get it done. You need to get this done for me. I really don't know how I would even do that. What? It was like, just get it done. Just get it done.
And
Okay.
my guest today is someone who talks to dead people, folks.
It was sort of like that, and I think she was like being more pleading with me and trying to turn on her womanly ghostly charms on me, trying to work them on me a little bit. And so that I went back to the opposite. And I was like, "What happened? Why doesn't she have a?" Okay, well, the story is that she uh, was married to her fifth husband, and she died. And he placed her in a holding mausoleum at Woodlawn Cemetery in 1928 when she died, just like a holding place, with the intention of giving her a burial and a grave marker. But he never did it. 20 years passed.
Hmm.
She sat in that holding um, mausoleum, and he was paying monthly rent on it. And then, well, I have to see something outside.
Well, I guess I have to fill in here for a
Wait,
second.
can you pause for like 10 seconds while I bring my dog in?
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, we're on again. So you were on Nora Bayes.
Yes. So I went back to them. So he kept her in a holding mausoleum for 20 years, and when he died, he had remarried. His ex-wife, his wife, the current wife, was sort of like, okay, I got to get rid of this body. So she put Nora in an unmarked grave. She put him in an unmarked grave next to her, and she went off and got buried eventually somewhere else in Long Island. So sort of like she like deposited them there and wanted to forget about them. I think she could never get out of Nora Bayes' shadow.
Hmm.
That's what it was. Like, you're living in the shadow of this. Like, if you were married to Madonna, and then you got another wife, the wife would always be like thinking, and he might have always been thinking about Nora Bayes. So anyway, they had to get permission from her family, not Nora Bayes' family, the person, the former wife of him, and it was so complicated. And they're like, oh, we just could never unravel it. We could never unravel it. It's like, well, let's, what do you want me to do? Who do I have to contact? Oh, well, no, we don't know. Okay, listen, I'm going to call you next month. See what you can do. Start working on it. I'm going to do some research too. I kind of called them every month. And then eventually they said, you know what? We figured it out. So we're going to get her a grave marker, and we're going to um, do an unveiling. And we'll do it in April. So we got her a grave marker.
Well, it's a good story. So
To
yeah,
send you
good for
the
you.
that article too.
Yeah,
But that was another New York Times thing.
yeah. You probably posted about it on Facebook, and I had just forgotten. So
Yeah, yeah. 2018.
okay, yeah, that is going back. But yeah, it's a good story. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, yeah.
And just I have other questions in my head.
Sure.
Just going back a bit, you mentioned your siblings, which I wasn't aware of, and what do they think about your record collecting? Do they make fun of you?
No, not really. A lot of them came from their collections, so they come over and we'll listen to their stuff again.
Oh, okay, they collect them too. I
They
see.
always know, and I've sort of been into this, and I've always done it. So, it's fine. They appreciate it. They're music lovers like I am,
Oh, well, that's good.
so they absolutely get into it like as well.
Well, yeah, I'm just thinking about the sibling dynamics in my family, and there are things going on there. But it sounds like you have a happier family, so that's good.
Oh, I guess most of the time.
Yeah, the Gilmores are a little messed up, but I won't go there because we're on the air.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, Anyway, well, we haven't gotten to WFMU yet. So, had you done it? Had you been on radio before you went to WFMU?
Yeah, I took a radio course in New York City
That's what I suspected.
around 1980s, in the early 80s. This was, how to be on radio. And you go in, you have this really old-fashioned console, two turntables, and you're able to make a cassette tape. And they claimed that they were broadcasting your show somewhere, um, but I don't know if it was true.
Hmm.
But they definitely there's a booklet I got with it about how to be a radio DJ, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think in a bit of a way it was kind of a ruse because they were trying to, oh yeah, we can make you a famous DJ. Just keep on taking more courses. I just needed to get some hands-on time with the equipment a little bit.
Well, it worked. You became a famous DJ.
Well, sort of, I guess. Well, if we'll use more infamous, I think.
That's true.
Yeah. So and then a few years later, I was doing DJing on this weird. It was like the music on one of your dead cable channels.
Hmm.
This guy had some kind of deal where the music was on channel whatever it was, 87 of cable, and so he had DJs coming in, so I would do radio shows on there. And then, but I was always obviously listening to music, as I explained, in lots of different ways, and listening to radio growing up, and always knew of WFMU, that it had interesting programs, interesting music. They turned me on to a lot of things. And so I had volunteered, I think, for a couple events to see where they
Uh-huh.
were at this point in East Orange, New Jersey. And then I reached out to the station manager and said, I have an idea for a show. I was still just getting into this stuff, but I said, I want to come down and play records on the Victrola and cylinder records live on the air. And he said, well, we've never had anything like that before. And I said, exactly.
Yeah.
So he's like, yeah. He's like, that's an interesting idea. Let's try it out. So he basically tried it out, and he's like, I'm putting you into the schedule. So that was like 95, I think.
Yeah.
And so just dove right into it. It was definitely the cart before the horse kind of situation because I never, well, from the beginning, I certainly was no expert. Um, and I was learning. But again, I approached the show as just me playing records. I
Yeah.
didn't approach it like a Rich Conity. I was going to be that, although I knew his show. I was like, oh, he's the pedantic one. I'm just the guy. Hey, this is a good record, and trying to pull from my books information I could find about them. So really, it was just about playing records. It was very minimal talk between, like, this is the next one, and discovering stuff along the way and learning along the way. So yeah, I did that for over 20 years,
Yeah.
and lots of remote shows also, where I would go out and do shows at different locations, and yeah, it was what I call, I think, my 10,000 hours to become more of an expert,
Yeah.
being immersed in it every week of playing, having to play having to make a show, making sure the machines are fixed, and so on. So it was immersive for me too.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about, I did my own show in college, which was, again, inspired by you. And I'm just remembering how nervous I was the first couple of weeks on the air, but I got over that and I learned. So I kind
Yeah,
of know what that's like.
you're just talking to yourself and everyone, really.
Yeah. So, as I said, I've been going through the archives and re-listening to your shows, and you talk a lot about the response you were getting from listeners and a lot of people emailing you. So, how long do you think it took for your show to catch on? Were you getting a lot of emails right away, or did it take a while? Or
Um, well, it started pre-internet.
right?
Started just terrestrial radio days, and then I guess it was around, I don't know, 2000 or so, maybe, where they started going online with my show. They started doing mine as one of the early online shows because there was a lot of confusion over whether they could broadcast over the internet and the rights of songs and stuff. But my stuff, they're like, oh, you're probably public domain, so we're just going to let you do your thing. Um, so I got a lot of interesting uh, feedback, especially in the early days, because people would be like, wow, it's really interesting to get to hear this music. I'd never really heard about it before, and I would get really great ones like, oh, I knew my grandfather made records in the 20s and
Right.
I never heard them before, but I found this playlist and your show online and I'd be able to hear his voice. So that was so great. Thank you. People would send me some memorabilia about the artists because they were family descendants of some of them and stuff. And just, yeah, getting feedback from people discovering it. There was a chat feature on there, live chat when the shows were going on, so
Right.
we were having real time conversations sometimes. So it was always good to yeah, get feedback from people and know that they were responding to hearing this material.
Yeah. So how did the idea of having guests come on start? Because I was thinking about how unusual it is for that you let a 16-year-old kid come in the studio, and I don't think most shows would do that.
I had very low standards. So
Well, that explains it. Now I know our whole friendship has been a joke, Mac.
yeah, I hope for more jokes in the future.
Yes. Well, I'm trying.
Yeah. Uh, well, again, my approach was from the very beginning, as I said before, was I'm just playing records for people to share with people for my collection. That's what this mostly is. It's not pointed. It's not even always about what I like. It was more about here's records from the period
Right.
and just giving people an opportunity to hear, the sappy, crappy love songs, that are so rote even then, and other, all sorts of stuff. So anybody who it's like, oh, I have a record collection, yeah, tell me what you're going to bring. Hopefully it's stuff that I don't have, and maybe I've never even heard it before. Great, we're just playing some records together. So I thought that was a great way. And then there was a lot of people who had super rare stuff that would come on
Yeah.
and play the records. So that's what I discovered. Yeah, I would have a person who's just kind of into it come on. Yeah, you can bring your records, we can play. Then I have these super collectors who would bring the rarest of their rare stuff that I
Yeah.
would never get to hear before. I'm like, great, this is fantastic. So it was interesting to get both ends of that.
Yeah. And I guess one of the other subjects I was thinking about is that you used to play some of the minstrel show records and things that are politically incorrect. And of course, you always made it clear that you were playing them because they were part of the time period. You weren't condoning them, and that's obvious. But I was just thinking, I was wondering what kind of reaction you got to that and how much more politically correct things have become now. And I don't think you could get away with playing them now, but do you?
I think that if again, like you were saying, like I was saying earlier, it's like this. My show was about playing the machines. Like people hear the sounds of machines of the period, and giving them whole range of what kind of records were out there, and including some stuff that, yeah, the coon songs that we would was a huge American uh, popular song idiom, and from ragtime into the early aughts, it was a whole thing. And so, how do you contextualize that so that people can understand it was a thing? But is the very act of playing it and sharing it, like we're saying, it's not condoning it. It's just saying this was a thing. It's like a document. I always thought of it like a document, like you're watching the History Channel about Hitler.
Yes.
They're doing a whole in-depth biography about Hitler. They're not saying Hitler's a great guy, or oh, this we're it's not putting any light like that on it. It's like, here's this person, here's this thing of what it was in history, and judge for yourself. You know the artist Burt Williams, who I mentioned before,
Yep.
is a super uh, super well, the first black superstar, for
Yes.
sure. And But his difficulties with having to wear blackface as a black man, as a light skinned black man, um, is a whole thing that surrounds his music and his legacy. Um, I think that there's WAP songs also. There was all the Cohen songs were
Yeah.
Jewish slanting humor. There's the Irish ones, yeah.
Yeah.
There's the country bumpkin dumb guys. There are all sorts of people just laughing and making fun of each other. And and laughing at their differences while becoming Americans together to sort of see what they were and how they were the same, maybe also. Um, it's a complicated thing, but again, I think there's room if you present it in the right way, and you're not like laughing at it or laughing with it.
Yeah.
You're just sort of looking at it and saying, "Oh, this is this is what was going on at the time in culture, and not all of our history is beautiful. A lot of it is
Yeah.
ugly.
Very ugly. Yeah.
So you got to look at the ugly, man."
But I was curious whether you got any negative feedback. Did you get emails from
No,
people
never
saying,
did. No, I actually got people say, more, um, more just supportive. I would say,
well, that's
just,
good.
oh wow, it's interesting that to hear this. Wow, what a time, that this would be acceptable.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, right. Uh, so no, I never got anyone saying, "How dare you play that kind of stuff." I'm waiting for it to happen now. Once all those shows online, it's going to happen. Uh,
Yeah, that's what I said. I don't think you could play
Tomorrow.
them now.
Well, no, no, someone's going to discover my archives tomorrow
Right.
and be like, "Oh, how dare you? You played those records back in 2000. How could you do that? You were
Yeah.
so wrong."
Well, that's probably going to happen.
Yeah, I'm waiting for it.
Yeah. Let me just check my notes here, see what we haven't covered yet. We covered a lot of things. It's just a couple other things because going through the archives, I remembered when Tom Sharpling followed you, and he would used to do that bit where he would talk back to the records you were playing. So I was and say horrible things about them, and I was just wondering how that started. Did he come to you and say, "I want to try this," or
No, no, it's not. Never. The whoever followed me, whoever had the next show, I would always just say to them, "I'm done when you hear the record run out." So I'll try to time it for whatever it is, 8 o'clock. At 8 o'clock. You can hear that record run out, and that's your cue to take it. So because
right?
I say goodbye and then I play a last record. So when you get to that last record run out, I let that go and I'm listening until you take it. So typical most DJs would be like, okay, from my show, okay, here's the record run out because they had a separate control room they were in, and they would just like go from my show to their show, and it'd be like a 2 second switch, and I hear the hiss over, like done, okay, good, I'm done. But then yeah, Tom started riffing on it,
Yeah.
on that, and I was like, oh, okay, he's all right. I'm gonna let it go, or I'll play with it. It's I don't think we ever even talked about it before or after or ever.
Okay, I was just curious about that because that was amusing. So
It was Tom doing his thing, man.
yeah. So I have, I guess, a few more questions, and then we'll wrap it up pretty soon. But one of the things I've noticed, one of the other things I've noticed going through your archives is, of course, usually you were just being yourself, but there were some shows where you would do different personas or different characters, and you would improvise in characters. So that made me wonder whether you ever took any acting classes or improv classes or anything like that.
Which one was that?
You did a couple of April Fool's Day shows where you would do other characters and things like that, and there was like you did a Memorial Day show where you were sarcastically being like super patriotic and talking about how great American music is and that kind of thing.
Okay.
And you would just riff doing these
Uh,
crazy things.
yeah, it could be anybody you want for
Yeah.
an hour.
I used to do Halloween shows as Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah, he's a very he's a very good character to do. My God, my Alfred Hitchcock sounds like George Harrison.
But yeah, I was wondering whether that came from any acting classes or anything like
Well,
that, or
I was one of the stars of my high school production of Story Theater. I mean, it was all over the Nutley Sun. It was all oh my God, the accolades were like dripping off me. They were just like it was. I was gooey. I was gooey from, and so of course there was that, and
I
then
I sense that you're being sarcastic, Mr. Cumella.
no, I did do a high school thing, but I think I've always been a kind of character. I
Yeah.
like to try to live my life as a character whenever possible, to the annoyance of a lot of people. But
Well, I guess that would explain it. Yeah, because I was a theater student, so I kind of wondered whether you had some background there, but I guess not.
why would you want to be
So,
yourself every day anyway?
yeah. Well, especially if you're me, but that's something I need to talk to my
Anybody.
therapist about.
Get bored with yourself,
Yeah.
you know? So the opportunity I get, I have another character I do, Blag, this creepy DJ that's just sort of all hood. I don't know if you've ever seen any of those photos.
No.
Um, yeah, I'll send you a photo of that. But he's like a hooded DJ, and I run my phonograph through a digital delay, so it just becomes a whole cacophony of phonograph laughing and crying noises, and it's just it's almost like very Andy Kaufman-esque, I'd say, because it's just can be kind of annoying but fascinating at the same time.
Yeah, I listened to a show this morning where you were playing three phonographs at once and playing three records at the same time.
Yes, yes, sure, push it.
Yeah.
I would like to create more fanciful phonographs too. I wish I could. I'd like to create like some Dr. Seussian ones for fun. But yeah,
So I was also just going to ask you why you stopped doing the show. I mean, I know 25 years is a long time to do a show, but what was the reason?
I'd say that doing a weekly show is a bit of work.
Yeah.
And it was good to do it for that long. That was long enough. The thing is, it's a completely volunteer situation. So, like FMU, you sort of it's like a great community of music, and it's attractive, and it's great to be part of it. But after a while, it's like, okay, and Mac, don't forget you have to sweep the floors also after your radio show.
Yeah.
And we have this other thing, this show next week where we need you to volunteer for a few hours for that kind of thing too. And you're never reimbursed for your records, your time, your materials, or your talents. And that's part of volunteering. I get it, but after a while, I felt like, oh man, this is like free content. Oh my God, they're getting the best free content ever. And I learned a lot, and I sort of transitioned from happy to give it away to like, you know what? I think that's enough. I've given, I've given a lot, and there was always So I felt like there wasn't a deep appreciation because DJs were also. It was sort of like a commodity. Felt a little
Yeah.
commodification of the DJs, and that they weren't really valued beyond what they were contributing. And there was like, oh, we're just meat. We're radio meat. And
Yeah.
it felt to me a little bit almost like a Tom Sawyer kind of arrangement. It's like, hey, you can whitewash the fence if you're good enough. I don't know if you're good enough, Andrew, to whitewash the fence.
Hmm.
You know the story of
Yeah, of
the
course.
yeah. It's like I don't know. It felt a little bit like that after a while. I was like, oh man, I'm whitewashing the fence, man, like for 20 years now. It just I had a change of heart about volunteer radio, which I know people still do, but I think people should be paid eventually for things or move on to something paid. So I moved on
Yeah.
to getting paid as a phonograph DJ.
Yay.
So I took took the next step and also created a big Facebook group, the Antique Phonograph Enthusiasts, which has
Yes.
10,000 members worldwide. And so that was the idea of that was just so that people could share. Not only I could share music and records, that other people could share stuff too. So it's all everyone's sharing ideas, and I run it kind of like with an iron fist. Anyone posts anything too negative or off topic, they're just like out. No, there's no conversation.
Yeah, I've had to block some people in there,
Yeah, well, they're probably gone. A lot of them too.
probably.
Point, we don't need to engage if you don't get it. It's all about phonographs. Yeah, but this guy in real life, I can't get involved in your real life. This is
Yeah.
not real life. This is something else.
Yeah.
So
So at
yeah,
this point, are you still collecting records?
I'm selling more records than collecting.
I would think so. Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
gonna have to do that.
yeah. I'm selling. I'm trying to get rid of a lot of stuff that I have because I've got too much. A little bit here and there. I bid on a James Reese Europe record
Hmm.
on eBay the other day, but I lost. It's okay. Some things, but more going out than coming in. Hey, that's a Burt Williams title.
Oh, that's
More
right.
going out and none coming in. There you go.
Yeah, well, you can see how full my shelves are, so I can't buy any more.
Oh yeah, yeah. I cleared off my shelves enough just so I can fit, my LPs and my 78s pretty much.
Yeah.
So I can just fit them, and the rest of them are in my shed. Do you want me to send you some?
No, I have enough, but thanks.
Okay. I think I have a book I still am going to send you. I know I sent you one book.
Yeah, the Harold Lloyd book.
Yeah, I think I have a Marx Brothers one. I think I have to send you.
Oh, well, I probably have it then. I have a lot of
Why a
Marx
duck?
Brothers. Yes, I have it, but thank
Okay,
you.
then good. I'm glad that we had this conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate that, though. So, there's one other thing, and I know you're into a pretty wide range of music aside from 78s, and you're a musician yourself and all that. So, just a couple of things about that. What was the first concert you ever went to?
Queen, 1977,
Oh,
at
that's cool.
Madison Square Garden with Thin Lizzy opening.
Wow. Well, that must have been
My
exciting.
sister took me.
Yeah. Is that all you're going to say about it?
Oh, well, they were my favorite group for along. I mean, they're still among my favorite groups because they're just what you listen to and what hits you so hard as a teenager is burned in. I mean, I
Sure.
actually met them, and
Really?
they did an in store record signing at that point. I went to both of them and got some things signed and met them and went oh went backstage in 1982 to when I went to see them, and it was one of the greatest nights of my life because during the day um, they did a record signing of their new record, Hot Space. Got that signed, and then I had second row at Madison Square Garden. It was unbelievable, and then had backstage passes, and backstage was like a circus. They had like topless waitresses, jugglers, fire breathers. You don't call them midgets; you call them little people. Little people cavorting around. It was like a carnival circus back there, and they. It was one of the greatest nights of my life, but also produced one of the greatest regrets of my life because they also had a full size mud wrestling ring back there, and there were these like ladies, mud wrestling, and people were like, jumping in. So at one point, two ladies were in there, in their bikinis in the mud wrestling ring, and they're like, "You, come on, I want you, come on." And then both are like, come on, you, come on." And like, I was with my girlfriend, and she's like on my arm, and I was like, "What?" They're like, "Yeah, we're calling you out. We're calling you out." And I was like, "No, what?" And and she's like pulling me, tugging me away, and I didn't know what I was doing, but she tugged me away. She's like, "Yeah, let's get away from there. Get out of there." But I, I regret not breaking free of her arm and diving into the mud wrestling ring back to the Queen concert and just fighting with those girls, wrestling in the mud with those girls.
Well, maybe tell that to your therapist and not to me. I don't know how this helps.
Well, that's just I'm just letting you know. It's
Yeah.
somehow your greatest moments of joy can also have your greatest regrets. I mean, if that's my biggest
Yeah.
regret, then I'm doing pretty good.
Well, that's quite a story anyway. Gives you something to talk about 50 years later or 40 years later, whatever it is.
Need something to talk to you about.
Yes. Well, that's why you're here to talk. So, just a couple other things because I want to talk about a couple of artists that we have in common. And I know you're a huge Zappa fan, so tell me something about your journey with Zappa.
I think I discovered "Don't Eat the Yellow Snow" in high school and thought it was kind of funny and goofy. And then just also being a musician, realizing, well, it's a lot more than that. And that whole record, like, wow, there are so many aspects to this. And he really opened up my mind to a lot of different kinds of music.
Yeah.
Then going back through his catalog and him talking about his influences, and me starting to appreciate people like Stravinsky and Edgar Varese
Right.
and other artists of the 20th century, and just just his comical and political and musical approaches I always could identify with and laugh with, but also be
Yeah.
amazed at. Saw him a bunch of times live, and just always a fascinating 20th century composer
Yeah.
that is sorely missed.
Oh, any stories about seeing him live?
Just used to go to the Palladium, and there'd be a 7:30 show and a 10:30 show, and go to both of them. They were completely different. Um, just really just always memorable shows. Just seeing him live and doing his thing with the different bands through the years. Just I saw him at least 5 or 6 times. No, they were just amazing all around, entertaining shows. Just he was always so good and played a long
Sure.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. And another artist that I know we've talked about before, Tori Amos. How did you discover Tori?
When I was playing music with a lady in the 2000s, she turned me on to her, and I started. I really didn't know anything about her. Excuse me. And so she just turned me on to her, and I just like, wow, she's amazing. She's
Yeah.
fantastic. Because I'm a huge Joni Mitchell fan, also.
Sure.
So it's like, wow, she's got a similar individuality to her,
Yes.
and spark to her songwriting, and her own thing is really good. And so just yeah, I just took to her right away and started to go see her and listen to all her music. And yeah, she's an amazing artist.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard her. I woke up at around like 5 in the morning on my 23rd birthday and couldn't go back to sleep, so I put Little Earthquakes on, and that was how I found her. So I regard that as the best birthday present I ever got.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Another regret of mine is before I really knew who she was, this was like in the 90s. I was walking through Chelsea Market is like call it a food court, yeah, but more fancy in Chelsea in New York, where you walk through. It's like store after store. You're walking down the halls, and there's also perfumeries and soap makers, that kind of place, but fancy New York level. And it was like the 90s. I was walking through there, and there's a woman standing in the door. She's like, "Oh, Tori Amos is about to be playing, in here." And I was like, "What?" She's like, "Oh yeah, it's an event we're doing in Tori Amos." I was like, I gotta go. I don't know where I was going. I was like, "Oh yeah, I think I've heard of Tori Amos," but it was like in a soap shop or something. It was a piano. And there's
Hmm.
like a few people in there. I was like, "Oh man, and I didn't stop. I didn't go, as it would have been seeing her like sitting next to her. But I did
Wow.
get to go. She did a show in New York on NPR, and a friend of mine worked in sound there, so she got me in. So I got to go to that show
Was
where
that
she
like 2014 or something like that? Because I might have seen the stream of that show.
maybe it's just her and the piano, I think, and it was just some of those Christmas songs.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't see that.
It was a Christmas record that she did.
Yeah, I didn't see that. But there was another New York show that she did that was
Might have been around 15 or 16.
okay. Yeah, never mind then.
Yeah.
But I guess I told you I met her, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was quite an experience. You mind if I share that story?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we're focusing on you, but it's my show, so what the
Mhm.
hell? Yeah, well, you know about the meet and greets at her shows, right? People line up outside the theater to see her and all
Yes.
that. So, yeah, a friend of mine took me to see her, and we got there, I think, at 9 in the morning, which back then was early for me, but now it's not because I get up pretty early now.
Mhm.
Anyway, but the problem was it was August, so it was 100 degrees, and we're standing out there for like 6 hours waiting for Tori. So by the time I got to see her, I was just really sick because I don't do well in the hot weather. So I was standing in line waiting to see her when she showed up, and one part of my brain is going, "Oh wow, there she is. I'm about to meet Tori, and this is amazing." And the other side of my brain went, "Well, I'm about to meet Tori, and it's possible that I might introduce myself by vomiting on her, and that's
Oh.
that's not good. So I don't know what I'm going to do here. I don't feel good." And then it was my turn, and her manager had already gotten my name, so she said, "Okay, Tori, this is Andrew." And she turned to me and said, "Hi, Andrew," and all the nausea just went, just disappeared, and I felt calm and fine. And there's just something about her presence that just made me feel perfectly fine. And we just had a nice little chat there for a few minutes, and I got my copy of Little Earthquakes signed. And she, if you ever watch interviews with her on YouTube, that's exactly who she is off stage. She's just very soft spoken and very nice, and it was magical just to be there with her for a few minutes. I'll never forget it. And she said something that I'll never forget because I remember I hugged her 3 times at different points in the conversation because I just couldn't help it, because it's Tori, because how can you not?
Sure.
And I went to I we were finishing the conversation, and I said, I'm sorry, can I just hug you one more time? And she said yes. And as I was hugging her, I was just getting some kind of signal in my brain that told me, it's like Nora Bayes talking to you. I got some message in my brain that said, she's about to say something important, so you need to remember what she's about to say. And she looked at me and she said, I feel your deep, wonderful spirit.
Wow.
And I've never forgotten those words. Anytime I'm beating myself up and I feel like I'm not good enough, I remember Tori Amos said that to me. So
Lovely, lovely.
I'll never forget that. And it was a great concert, too. So that's a day that will just always be with me. And I think on that note, we can wrap it up. It's because how are you going to top that? So
Yeah, yeah. Totally.
but I should ask you if you have any phonograph gigs coming up that you want to plug.
Not till later in the season. No, nothing immediately. They come and go. I had 2 last week, none this week. I might be going to Las Vegas the first week of March. Um, I get lots of inquiries. 75% of them don't pan out, but I'm
Hmm.
very grateful for the other 25% that do. So, but I'm always fixing up machines and working with my records and putting them on eBay and putting them on Facebook also, and active in the hobby, which is what I always wanted to be doing. So continuing to do that in all sorts of ways. And also, I what else I'm doing, I'll just mention last, is because I have an interest in the early music. I always wanted to have a band playing some of it.
Sure.
So I've been working on. I have a drummer and a singer and a guitar player. We're doing all a kind of Bessie Smith and Mamie Smith, Ma Rainey tunes. Some Louis. We're going up to like Louis Jordan, Cab Calloway. We're doing all these like old timey tunes. So
Oh,
it's
that's
been fun
great.
to be able to play that stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Yeah, you'll eventually you will.
Do you have a name for the band?
I think it might be the Palomine Blues Band,
Okay.
because you're a pal of mine, right?
Sure.
There
Always.
you go.
Well, on that note, it's really been a pleasure to talk to you again. And thank you so much. And you know you're somebody that changed my life. So it's always a pleasure to talk to you, Mac.
I
Thank you.
appreciate that, Andrew, so much. So happy that we've connected in this life, and always here, and keep it going.
Yeah. Well, I'll be in touch soon.
All right.
Thank you,
Cheers,
buddy.
buddy. Bye bye.